but it made it clear that we all have to work together, the state, Metro, PDC, the city, everyone to spur the type of economic development that we're trying to achieve. So it was a very worthwhile panel, and once again appreciated all the support from PDC staff. But I think the community really appreciates when we go out and tell them what we have done and tell them what we're planning to do and how we plan to work with other organizations and the community to get things accomplished. So I think it was very well received.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
I participated in the military and manufacturing conference at the Governor's Hotel, and they had a presentation on the Edith Green Wendell Wyatt federal building renovation. That's dumping about $150 million into local economy here, which is spectacular. This month, there's a whole series of presentations on government projects for the Corps of Engineers and for the Guard, the investments that they're making. And today we're going to be talking about a number of other federal investments we're taking advantage of. So I think it's great that the City of Portland and the State of Oregon has worked hard to win as much federal money and federal grants as possible, and we should continue that effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are you having fun in Salem, Commissioner Mullins?
I'm smiling, aren't I? I've spent most of the last 2 weeks in Salem, and one of the projects that we're continuing to advocate funding for, which is pertinent to this board, is the Oregon Sustainability Center. And I swing back and forth from day to day and wonder when if it's going to have legs at the end of the session or not. I'm not quite sure. We'll know more in about a week. They're targeting wrapping up a week from today, so we'll see.
Thank you. Patrick?
Thank you, Chair Andrews. Good morning, Commissioners. And I do want to comment on the financial transaction audit, but I'll save that for the end of my remarks in case other Commissioners would like to join in on the conversation. So once again, a busy couple of weeks. The first thing, and I know I've talked about this quite often, but we finally had the opportunity to unveil our Metro export plan. This was the project that's been sponsored by the Brookings Institution. We were one of 4 Metro areas to participate. Tremendous work on the part of Chris Harder from our team, as well as Noah Siegel from the Mayor's office. We now have a plan that's in implementation mode. It's now in the hands of Greater Portland, Inc., our regional economic development organization, and all the partners, including PDC, are looking forward to working together to make this plan a reality. So I did just want to report back on that. We had a great event on the 15th, and there seems to be a lot of excitement and a lot of coordination around this. So I wanted to give you each your official copy of the plan, and we appreciate your support of this effort. The second update is I think as everybody saw in the news, the announcement was finally made about the planned new Target store in the Galleria building in downtown. I had the opportunity to fill in for the chair at this event, which meant that the mayor wanted me to speak, so I had to do that one on the fly. But it's once again another step in the revitalization of our downtown retail core, and it seems like a perfect fit for both that building and that part of downtown. So we have folks here like Steve Shane and Catherine Kraniak who work on implementing our downtown retail strategy, and this is just one part of that strategy. That store they plan on opening that store in spring of next year, 2013. So look forward to that.
Just let me interrupt just a second, because I worked on this one, and it's going to be a great facility, great store for downtown Portland. But I wanted to point out that this is one that we were able to help sort of behind the scenes and with agencies, and we may have a $500,000 seismic upgrade to it, but this is not a subsidized project.
Right. The next thing is more of an announcement. We will be launching the new PDC website, same address, pdc.us. It's been a long time in the making. That website will launch on Monday, the 27th, so you'll notice a dramatic improvement in our website. And I just want to point out that this project took much longer than I think we had hoped. I think we would love to have had a new website up last year or even earlier than that. I think one of the things that people don't realize is that our website serves as an archive of public documents. The public expects and takes advantage of a treasure trove of documents on our website, and so converting over our website to a new format was not an easy task. And actually, the conversion is ongoing. We still have thousands of pages of documents that need to be converted over, and we felt like it was best to get the website up and running, and people can always request documents that aren't currently available. But a much bigger task than I think anybody appreciated. So look forward to that. I did want to highlight, even though Commissioner Dixon is not here, I hope you all saw this article in the Portland Tribune last week about her husband, Aubrey, who is a volunteer, Big Brother's program. And so it's just a great article about his commitment to giving back, but I think it also highlights the need for male volunteers for Big Brothers, and this is I think the main reason for the article. But very impressive story about his giving back. I'll pass that one around in case you guys haven't seen that. On a sad note, I did want to just point out, because of our strong relationship with OHSU, the passing of the president of their foundation, which was also in the news, Alan Price. He's only 56 years old. It's a very tragic loss, and we've had begun to work with Alan quite extensively in our dealings with OHSU. He had a long history at University of Oregon as well, so it's a tremendous loss for the city and for OHSU, and I know that they're still dealing with that loss, but these things always catch you by surprise. So on to some couple more fun notes. We have a new employee started this month. Her name is Ann Crispino Taylor. She's in our finance and asset management division. So she's joining in our real estate section. Really, she's helping out with our real estate portfolio. She worked for the city of Ashland and had just recently moved up here from Southern Oregon. So we're happy to have Ann, and she's helping out with a big workload on our real estate division. So welcome to Ann. And then the last thing before jumping into the conversation of the audit is this is the last board meeting for our Chief Administrative Officer, Julie Cody. Julie Cody, I think, as everybody knows, is leaving to go work for the state. I'm not sure why she's choosing the state over us, but maybe someday she'll tell us. But Julie, I think the board, knows Julie quite extensively. We have accomplished many things in this organization over the past, how long has it been, Julie? 8.5 years. We annually win awards for our financial reporting. We've cleaned up a lot of our systems issues during Julie's time. She took over human resources at a time when the organization was going through great change, and that's all recent work in addition to her years of project work. It's certainly an understatement to say that Julie will be missed here. We will try and move forward without her, but we wish her luck in her new job, and I'm sure she'll stop by, and she's promised me that she'll be available for me to call her and bug her if I have questions about things that happened long before I got here. So we plan other things for Julie, but because this is the last board meeting, I thought it would be a good opportunity to recognize Julie at the board meeting. So thank you, Julie.
Speech.
So on to the audit. I know Julie's not going to miss these audits, although she'll have her own audits at the state. So the city auditor's office regularly audits us on a number of topics. And in this case, this is a financial transaction audit, and it's really a broad scope. They go in and look at basically anything that counts as a transaction. So it's things that are entered into our systems, checks that are cut, payments that are made, anything that you can broadly consider to be a transaction. And they now have the ability through software to, instead of just sampling, which was kind of a more traditional audit technique, they are able to actually run through millions of transactions, and then the software picks out inconsistencies, and that's how mainly how this audit occurred. So they reviewed over 2.5 million transactions of ours over, I believe, probably something like an 8-year period. And so they've uncovered 9 findings, and they're addressed in the audit. And as the chair mentioned, we're pleased with the feedback that we've received from the auditor's office. We rely on the auditor's office to do these regular checkups and to point out where our processes, where our systems aren't perfect. We would love to be perfect, but an organization of this size, this complexity, and this history will have things that fall through the cracks, and we rely on both the city auditor as well as our private auditors to regularly come in and point things out. I just wanted to point out that because the press coverage didn't really focus on this, we have a extensive response to the audit that addresses each of the 9 findings, and contrary to what the audit report says, as well as what was reported in the press, we are actually addressing or have addressed all 9 items. And our letter explains exactly how we are addressing those. Some of them were very straightforward fixes, like recording overtime. Our system, we transitioned systems. Previous system didn't allow us to track it separately. We now have a system that does. It took a little bit of a while for our business process to catch up. That's been fixed. So things like that have already been addressed. Things like conflicts of interest and related party transactions. That's an area where we do track this stuff. We do have policies in place. We also adhere to state policy in that regard. So these are issues that we have been aware of and are consistently tracking and training employees around these issues. So we believe that the audit process is working, that the city auditor is finding things that need to be addressed, and we're addressing them. And there's nothing in this audit that in any way suggests, certainly not fraud, but any kind of intentional act on the part of staff or management. It really relates to process issues, to systems issues, and in some cases training issues. And this agency is happy to address those issues. And once again, we look forward to being audited regularly by the city auditor's office. It's, like I said, it's part of how we maintain a transparent and accountable agency. We have taxpayer dollars, and so we are committed to that audit process. So,
great. Thank you. I actually thought I'd give our audit advisory group, who have worked for years on this, Charles and John, a chance to comment if you'd like.
Yeah, I think Patrick touched on the key points. Clearly, we want our financial and accounting systems to report complete, accurate, and transparent information. And I think the point that you raised, Chair Andrews, earlier, that does come at a cost. We would love to be perfect. Having been an auditor in my prior career, I can tell you the cost of perfection is pretty high. The key here is we want to make sure that our information is complete and accurate, and that we're reporting it in a transparent manner. And as Patrick just stated, we have an external audit completed every year, and that external audit, for as long as I've been here and as long as I can remember, has resulted in an unqualified audit opinion. So with the city auditor, the external audit, we have comfort and assurance that our information is accurate and complete, and this is just a means for us to be even better. So that's the way I review any audit. I'll say this halfway jokingly: if you're an auditor and you don't find anything, people are going to question your value. And I'm not saying they're looking for things, but it's their job to inform us. It's our job to respond. And as Patrick indicated, we have responded. The findings make it clear that we have put things in place to address them. And I think the most value we can take from this is coming back to this commission and making it clear at a regular interval that we're addressing any and all findings that our external auditors and that the city auditors are finding. So as Chair Andrew stated, we would love to be perfect. We're not going to be perfect, but we can strive to be perfect. And that's how I look at these findings. It's information that we can use to make ourselves even better. So I would just ask that we have a regular reporting on any type of findings such as this, so that we know we are consistently moving towards being better. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you. John, anything?
These two have They've said it all, really, and I've been pleased to be a part of the process for the last several years. The only thing I would add is there's also an internal person that minds this, and we get an email once a month that shows the status of everything that was found and corrective action that's being taken and where it's at. So once we find out there's an issue someplace, and like Patrick said, there are no fraud, no intentional wrongdoing, just things that happen or accounting standards that change sometimes, we put the steps in place to address them and follow through. So thank you.
Thank you. Steve, anything?
I think just a job well done. Obviously, this is an agency that spends a lot of public money, and we make sure it's done appropriately. I think that's been proven, and I think the audits are an appropriate part of the function. So I think we should continue on with the great accounting that's already been done here.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Patrick. And before we move on, I also wanted to skipped over Julie. I've been on the commission for 3.5 years and have had the opportunity to work with her on the Finance and Investment Committee for that period of time. It's a great assignment, and that's where all of the loans and grants are reviewed. A lot of them are not of a size that are necessary to come to this board, but I've always been impressed with Julie. She has a banking background, and you might think of this committee almost as a loan committee, and she knows how to make a loan committee work. She also understands TIF and makes sure and keeps us all out of trouble and makes sure that we're spending the money legally as well as wisely. So I really appreciate it, and I hope I can call you when I need some help too. So congratulations. Thank you. We're going to move on to approval of the meeting minutes. We have January 11th, 2012 and February 8th, 2012. Does anybody have any changes or additions? Charles, you look like you have a...
No, I was going to say I was here for the January 11th meeting. I will move approval of those minutes. I probably should abstain from the following minutes since I was not here.
All right, we'll do them one at a time.
Okay.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. I'd look for the motion to approve February 8th.
So moved. Second.
Any further discussion? No changes. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Finally, the time for public comment for items not on the agenda. I don't have anyone signed up. Doesn't look like anybody's anxious to get on television this morning, so we will move on to the regular agenda. Right on time.
You should call Judy Cody up. She told me she needed bigger budget challenges, more resource challenges, so she's going to the state.
Sounds good. Okay, this is an action item. Authorize an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Portland for joint management of $1 million grant from U.S. Economic Development Administration to fund Portland Regional Clean Tech Advance Project. This is Resolution 6920. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair, Commissioners, and Executive Director Quinton. I'm Jennifer Nolfi, and I manage our Business and Industry Division, and I'm joined by Jared Wiener, who's also a project coordinator with our division, and Fran Breeding, who's a budget analyst here at PDC. While the action item before you is really focused on a technical amendment to our grant, we really wanted to take this opportunity to share with you what this grant means to PDC, how it aligns with our strategic mission, PDC's strategic mission, and how PDC continues to drive economic development throughout the region with a focus on jobs, innovation, and really driving regional job growth throughout the region. I think it's really important to call out that this was a collaborative effort of PDC. Chris Harder led this effort, and with your support and Patrick's support, we're really seeking opportunities to seek new resources to support our work. Much of our work in terms of the cluster industry is not TIF eligible, and so we really need resources to help us drive that work more effectively. And we worked with our regional partners, the port. A number of agencies were involved. The City Grants Office, I want to recognize our PDC's Government Affairs Office, Keith Witowski, as well as our City Government Affairs Office, Tony Barnes and Fran, and then Public Affairs. This really was a collaborative effort in identifying opportunities and going forward. Before I turn it over to Jared, I just want to reinforce that this really is focused on advancing our clean tech industry cluster, but also identifying the synergies with advanced manufacturing and helping those companies grow and identify new product lines and helping them be more competitive globally. There's also the opportunity to focus on innovation and collaboration with higher ed. Just this morning, Chris Harder is at a Manufacturing 21 meeting this morning talking about this initiative because it does require collaboration with our industry partners. And then next week, we have an event with the Pacific Northwest Defense Coalition, Manufacturing 21, and Work Systems, Inc., again, to talk about this initiative and how it really is focused on jobs, workforce development, and innovation. So I'm going to turn it over to Jared now, who's really going to go in more depth about how this grant really aligns with our strategic plan with lenses of social equity, stewardship, innovation, and then Fran's going to talk about the actual resolution action before you this morning. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. And for the record, my name's Jared Wiener. And so we'll go through just a couple of things here, and Jennifer touched on it, that we really wanted to take this opportunity. I don't think that we've gone before the commission about what the purpose and the structure of the grant is and how it aligns with PDC's mission. So we really wanted to take this opportunity. We had to come in front of you with this technical change to the grant structure, and we wanted to go through the grant with you and answer any questions that you have. So Jennifer touched on sort of the strategic approach that this grant takes. What I'll go through is how it fits within PDC's mission, the structure of the grant, just to give you some context for it, as well as the progress that we've made to this point, and then I'll turn it over to Fran to discuss the actual action item that we're here in front of you today. And so this grant really supports the building blocks and the mission of PDC. It really does support the efforts that we're undertaking to make Portland the most desirable and equitable city, and it does that by focusing on job creation and innovation. And one of the components of that is it supports our cluster development strategy. This grant, the clean tech component of it, certainly focuses on the clean tech cluster, but it also focuses on the advanced manufacturing as well, and some of the efforts that it's trying to transition our advanced and traditional manufacturing industries into more of the clean tech sector. And I'll get into that a little bit more when I go through the actual structure of the grant. Another component that it supports within PDC's strategic objective is the entrepreneurship and innovation. It does this by supporting one of our regional partners, Oregon Best, and building upon some of the successes that they've seen with other initiatives towards entrepreneurship and innovation specifically. A third component or building block is a social equity component. This grant in itself has one component that's devoted specifically to social equity. It's also intertwined within many aspects of our grant as well. And I'll get into that a little more detail on the next slide when I go through the grant structure. But it's mostly with some supply chain development work that we're focusing on there. And then the final building block is stewardship of resources. And Jennifer touched on this. It really is an opportunity to partner with federal agencies to move forward not just what we feel is good for the economic development of Portland, but also what's good for the economic development initiatives that are being undertaken all throughout the United States. And so really aligning PDC's mission, or PDC's mission in this case, aligns very much so with what the federal government is looking to do. So those are four of the building blocks. I wanted to get into a little bit more detail on the actual grant structure. I think it'll make a little bit more sense there. And so the entire grant that we're working with is the Jobs and Innovation Accelerator Challenge Grant, and that's a grant for $2.15 million. The grant comes from 3 different federal agencies as funding partners, and it also has an additional 13 agencies that work with those 3 agencies. So it's a total of 16 agencies. The 3 funding agencies are the EDA, the ETA, and then the SBA. I'll get to our portion here in a moment, but it may make more sense if I start with the SBA portion. And their portion is really devoted towards small and disadvantaged businesses. And the agency, the regional partner that's taking the lead with that is Oregon Micro Enterprise Network. I mentioned earlier that there's really a social equity component that's within our grant as well. We're working with Oregon Micro Enterprise Network on many aspects of our grant as well. So they're a strategic partner, not just with the SBA portion, but also within the EDA portion that I'll get into a little more detail in a moment. The workforce development component is also a strategic portion of the grant as well. And I should say that what this does by having these 3 agencies working together is you're really combining the workforce and the economic development aspects. And so we're able to work collectively with our workforce and work as well with our disadvantaged businesses. But the portion I really want to focus on today is the EDA portion of the grant. And this is the portion that we have the most direct involvement with. And so I wanted to go into a little more detail on that. There's really 4 aspects of this grant. The first one being supply chain development. And we're working with multiple partners on this. And the strategic goal and what we're trying to achieve here is understanding the clean tech supply chain a little bit better, and then also being able to assist our companies, taking them to different industry events that are beneficial to them. So there's both a research component to this as well as an outreach component to this. And we're working with Oregon Micro Enterprise Network to identify firms that may be small as well as disadvantaged that can participate in this portion of the grant as well. A second component of the grant would be the product diversification and reengineering. Jennifer spoke to Chris Harder, one of our colleagues, going and speaking at their board meeting today. Manufacturing 21 plays an intricate role in this portion of the grant. What this portion of the grant really does is it combines the industry with our university partners. And so this allows for a lot of collaboration and coordination between higher education and the industry itself. A third component is technology commercialization, and this is the portion that's directly aligns with our entrepreneurship initiative here at PDC. And this is the portion of the grant that Oregon Best is taking a large role in. They received a federal grant about a year ago, and this is in many ways building off the successes that they've experienced with that grant. It's really to take businesses that are in what's often described as a valley of death. As far as commercialization, they have a concept but aren't able to actually take it to a commercialization step. And this will allow them to use our partner resources to get them to that next step. And the final portion of the grant is the Clusters Opportunities Report. And what this will give us is sort of the best practices, lessons learned, and that's important in a couple of different ways. One is it provides our federal partners with a feedback loop on the successes that we've experienced, and it will allow them to create a better process going forward. And then the second thing it really does for us is it allows us to learn and to partner with our regional partners in a better way moving forward. We'll be able to learn from our lessons here. So, I wanted to also give you an update of the progress that we've made here, as well as the next steps. One of the significant things that we've done so far is we've been able to coordinate with 12 different regional partners. In addition to that, we've also had the opportunity to coordinate with different federal agencies. It's been both challenging at times, but it's also been very rewarding. And I think the key in this step is the coordination aspect. We have an advisory committee set up for the EDA portion of the grant, the portion that we're spearheading. And we also meet regularly with the other agencies that are responsible for the other portions of the grant, have regular meetings on a quarterly basis with Oregon Microenterprise Network as well as Work Systems, Inc. A second thing that we've been able to accomplish is to establish the grant structure. This has been, in many ways, building off of the coordination key, and we've been able to work with our EDA partners to take what was originally accepted and move it into something that's actually actionable, come up with a project timeline, and move forward with the grant process. And so we do have many next steps, and we recognize that there is a lot to do. We've laid a good groundwork, but one of the next things that we'll need to do is actually set up grant agreements with all of our subrecipients of the grant, all our partners on the EDA portion of the grant. That's one of our significant next steps that we have to achieve. Again, we haven't awarded any of the grant funds that we've received to date. We expected it to be to take significant time to actually establish the grant structure and to move forward with it. This is something that we anticipated, but it is something that we hope to move forward with relatively soon. And then the final next step is the reporting requirements that the federal government mandates. We have a major report due by the end of April. And speaking to the end of April, we do have quite a few next steps here. We recognize that. But within the next 10 weeks, which will take us to the end of April, we expect that we'll move everything from the next steps to the in progress line item underneath this. So my presentation, the point of it was to take you through a summary of the grant, provide you some basic information on the structure of it as well, and then also give you an overview of the progress made and the next steps that we hope to take. Happy to answer any questions for you, but we wanted to take you to the actual action item that we have before us today, and for that, I'll turn it over to Fran.
Good morning, Chair Andrews, Commissioners, Executive Director Quinton. So before I even jump right into the action item that's before you, I thought it'd be a good idea to just kind of give you a background of why we're here requesting the technical amendment in the first place. So in September of 2011, the Economic Development Administration awarded the grant to the City of Portland, and in that award document, the PDC was identified as a subrecipient. So after the city accepted the grant award, the EDA came back and requested that we amend the grant award and identify PDC as a co-recipient, which would establish a joint management structure for the grant. They primarily requested that change because PDC is really going to be responsible for the day-to-day implementation of the project. So they wanted this joint management structure in place for liability purposes. But the key thing to understand is that the EDA will not disperse any funds to the PDC or the city until this joint management structure is in place. So we can't move forward with some of the next steps that Jared outlined, which are, awarding the grant funds to the subrecipients that he mentioned. So that said, the action that's requested of you today is to authorize this intergovernmental agreement that will change the PDC's status from subrecipient to co-recipient and will formalize the joint management structure that the EDA is requiring. And the next step after that will be approval by the Portland City Council.
Great, thank you. Very thorough report. Important topic as well. I'll start just with a couple of things. One is we all know what our future budgets look like, and this is the kind of programs that we need to find to help keep us viable and do a good job for the city. If you take a look at this, for this particular piece alone, we're providing $350,000. 270 of that is personnel. It's management. It's only $80,000 in cash, and yet there's a $2 million budget. So great job, and a great award for us to get. Also, I'll have to admit, the first thing I do when I wake up every morning is check Oregon Live and look at City Hall Watch. And the article today was on the OMEN, the microenterprise network, and the fact that they're moving into a new location and they're doubling in size. And a very good story about what they do, and a little highlight about the woman that we saw at our last meeting that has her donut shop, and how she is also helping other folks get started. So, great article. Yeah, absolutely good. It's going to support our cluster strategy perfectly, and I just think it's a great result. Why don't we start down with you, John? Any thoughts?
No, I don't really have any questions. It's just you guys laid it out very well, and it ties in with everything that we're trying to do. It's spread out nicely, so good work. Thank you.
Steve?
Who actually submitted for the grant, and who should we be thanking for their efforts?
The city, Chris Harder and our team was the lead in coordinating it and pulling all the pieces together, and then working with our government affairs office because there was a lot of coordination across the federal agencies. And then the city was actually the applicant, but because of the amendment and the requirements of the EDA, we now have to be a joint recipient of the funds.
Thank you. And then the second question is it sounds like there is some strings attached in terms of reporting. What is that effort, and how much do you think that's going to cost of the total amount that's awarded? I'm just kind of curious about how much the strings that are attached to it cost to actually get implemented.
So I didn't get into the way that the $1 million that the EDA is providing for this grant is, but they do provide 10% of those funds for administrative costs in addition to actual costs for the action item. I think it'll be significant reporting. I think a lot of the efforts for that are going to be undertaken at the beginning. If we lay a good framework and foundation, which I think we have done, it'll make the reporting requirements fairly straightforward moving forward.
As Chair Andrews stated, an excellent and thorough presentation. It's driving us in the direction we need to be going in our cluster areas, touching on 2 of the 4. So that's excellent. As far as our policies, I noticed, and I think you just answered this, Jared, but it says this will not, or our policy regarding cost recovery does not apply. Is that the reason because it is federal funding and it's mandated at 10%? That's all that's allowable for overhead, or am I misreading that?
So I think the cost recovery policy does not apply. Unlike with other intergovernmental agreements, this is just an administrative IGA, and so it's
just administrative. We're
yes.
not, and our dollars out are about $80,000 cash and in kind at $270. So okay, I was just curious about that. And then the reporting, excuse me. I would just ask that when we submit quarterly reporting, we have a brief update so we know the progress on this particular action, because it would be good for us to just report to the Commission and to the public regarding how we're moving with the implementation of this $1 million.
I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, thanks.
Good. Great idea. Thank
Chair
you.
Andrews, if I may, I just wanted to, I'm quite certain on this application we actually had significant support from the Port of Portland. I think they actually dedicated a staff person. Her name is Lise Glancy, to work with Chris on this, and all on their dime. So I just wanted to acknowledge that they've been great partners in this.
Yes, thanks for pointing that out. They were.
Thank you. Okay, so I would look for a motion to approve Resolution 6920, authorize an IGA with City of Portland for joint management of $1 million grant from U.S. Economic Development Administration to fund Portland Regional Clean Tech Advanced Project.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Look forward to the updates. Last item on the agenda today is also an action item, Resolution 6921, authorize an IGA and right-of-way dedications to Pbot for construction of Foster Woodstock Streetscape Enhancement Project. And I can't tell you how timely this is, since I got an email yesterday from a Lentz activist asking when they're going to actually see us do a project out there. Ironic.
Well, good morning, Commissioner. I think you'll get some good news as a result of the IGA. I'm John Jackley, the Neighborhood Division Manager, and with me today is Sue Lewis, who's the Project Manager for the Foster Woodstock Streetscape Project. We're going to give you a brief overview of the project, touch on some of the contracting issues, and then we have Greg Jones from the Portland Bureau of Transportation and Dr. Michael Cobb from the Audit Department of Transportation to discuss their roles in bidding and awarding the contract and in setting the DBE goal. Commissioners, this project is strongly supported by the community as a significant enhancement to the Lentz Town Center Business District. It brings safety improvements, street lighting, curb extensions, on-street parking, and other things to enhance the vitality of the business district. As Sue will relate, it's had extensive public participation and equally extensive public support by the business community and the residents. The funding for the project has come in three major pieces. First, PDC's provided from the Lentz URA about $1.8 million for engineering, acquisition, and project management. There is a federal MTIP grant of $1.93 million, so our money's been leveraging other sources. And then the IGA before you today has $797,000 for construction, plus right-of-way dedication and temporary construction easements. Commissioner Sue will give you a brief overview of the project itself. Like I said, I'll touch on some of the contracting issues. And then Greg Jones and Dr. Cobb will join me up here to discuss their roles and approaches to the project. Sue?
Good morning, Chair Andrews, Commissioners, and Executive Director Quinton. I'm here before you to request authorization for the Executive Director to enter into a approximately $797,000 intergovernmental agreement and execute the dedication of approximately 10,000 square feet of right-of-way and temporary construction easement to implement the Foster Woodstock Streetscape Enhancement Project. So let me orient you to the area here. This is a Surety Northwest, and over here to the east we have the New Copper Penny, and along here is the Lentz Transit Station light rail station here. Okay, on this map we have the project outline is in yellow, and you see PDC-owned property in red. The project boundaries are approximately to the east, southeast 88. To the, that would be the west. To the east would be the light rail station. To the north is Reedway, and to the south is Woodstock. Elements of the project, as John mentioned, are wider sidewalks, street trees, bioswales, stormwater facilities, and pedestrian scale lighting, a pedestrian traffic signal, and additional parking and street alignment, aligning 91st here. The elements of the project will create a pedestrian environment that will improve safety and create walkability to create a sense of place in the town center. We will also improve traffic flow and will, most importantly, lay the foundation for redevelopment and economic growth in the town center. As John mentioned, PDC's total investment in this project is approximately $2.5 million. This leveraged a $1.9 million Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program grant. The IGA today is a small portion of the construction that is not eligible for MTIP funding. I also wanted to point out that we are excited that we are almost completing construction designs plans for the traffic island here, which will implement landscaping. It will add sidewalks, and that will connect the pedestrian signal, and will create a monument right there to announce the entryway into the town center. And this is implementing an original goal in the 1999 Lent URA plan, so we're very excited about that. The project has evolved through an extensive public participation process that included many citizen advisory committee meetings, public open houses, and the Ramona Street Fair here. And I'm glad to say that construction will not impact the Ramona Street Fair this year, which is scheduled for the last Sunday in July. So I hope you all come out and join us there. The project basically is a template of what is in front of Assurity Northwest. We expect construction is scheduled to begin in early summer, complete within 6 to 9 months, and I hope you all will join me in a ribbon cutting ceremony in early spring next year.
Okay, Sue, thank you very much. Commissioners, this project has some contracting issues as well as opportunities that we wanted to make you aware of. Because the project does have federal funding, the DBE, the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Goal for the project, will be set by the Oregon Department of Transportation. Our program doesn't apply. Pbot, the Portland Bureau of Transportation, will do the bid and the award and manage the construction project. So in order to make a partnership project like this work on the contracting side as well as on the neighborhood and the business side, it's going to require all of us to work well together, and I think we've taken a good start. In order to maximize the contracting opportunities that we will have on the project, we're taking an approach similar to the one that we took with the Parks Department on the Fields Park project in the Pearl. So the Metropolitan Contracting Improvement Partnership, MCIP, will help with expanded outreach, including on-site walkthroughs, having the plans and specifications available in the office so contractors can come in and both get counseling from Executive Director Tony Jones and the staff there, or go through the plans and specs themselves. We'll do on-site walkthroughs with potential bidders and subcontractors like we did on Fields Park. Pbot has ensured sufficient bid times. You know, one of the regular complaints we hear just about the business in general is that subcontractors only get 2 or 3 days or 5 days. Pbot has a process that includes a number of weeks in terms of notice for subcontractors to get these kind of notices and prepare bids. And so we're looking at the same kind of expanded outreach, including hands-on opportunities. We've got an arrangement with MCIP and NAMCO to provide one-on-one technical assistance, whether it's on bidding or estimating for minority and women contractors that might be interested in participating on the project. We'll have presentations both to NAMCO, to AWAMI, and to the other organizations that we work with. And Pbot has taken similar approaches to this. They've just had a successful process in Cully, for example, using this kind of outreach. So I think it's something that they're familiar with. But I wanted to let you know that we are working through some of the contracting issues in that it's PDC funding along with MTIP funding. Pbot will do the bid and the award. ODOT will set the DBE goal. And at this point, we've invited Greg Jones from Pbot and Dr. Michael Cobb, who's the head of the ODOT Office of Civil Rights, to come up and discuss for a couple of minutes their approaches to the bid and award. And then Dr. Cobb will explain how ODOT will go about working with us in Pbot to set a DBE goal that we all would like to see. So, Sue, why don't you come back up after they're finished? And,
okay.
Of course, questions whenever you wish.
Thank you, John. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning.
Thanks for being with us.
Why don't we start with Mr. Jones on the bid and award, and then we'll go to Dr. Cobb.
Right. Good morning. Greg Jones with the Portland Bureau of Transportation. I manage the Capital and Development Services Division. And we have had a relationship with ODOT for a number of years now that allows the city to bid and award federally funded contracts. Typically, in the past, the state has taken responsibility for any federally funded transportation project and has, through their commission, bid and award those projects. Under a certification program, the city is now allowed to do that. But we do that under both state and federal oversight. And we will use the city's purchasing process to put together the bid package. And then typically we, on a project like this, would probably have about a 3-week advertisement period. That has not been set yet, but it would typically be about that long for this size project. And then we would move into award and then pre-construction activities to get the contract signed. The work that we do in advance of the advertisement and award of the contract is to work with all partners to try to make sure that there's adequate outreach information about the projects available. We work with many of the associations to try to get the word out as to what the project elements are, what opportunities there are within the project for subcontracting, and to make sure that there's good knowledge about what is the requirements of the project so people know what they're bidding on. We can do on-site walkthroughs with contractors, and we can provide information through that bidding process. There are 3 areas where ODOT retains authority on federally funded projects. One is environmental. So ODOT, acting for the Federal Highway Administration, must review and approve all environmental documentation and approvals. Second is right-of-way. So right-of-way certification is required on projects with federal funds, and ODOT, again, acting for federal highways, does that. And finally, civil rights. So all Title VI activities, DBE, EEO activities are reviewed and approved, and the goals are set by ODOT. So as we receive the bids and open the bids, those bids are then sent down to ODOT, and ODOT reviews them, sets and finds the either the proposal responsive or non-responsive, and then gives us that information back. So it's a relatively straightforward process. It takes less time than bidding through ODOT, and generally people have been very receptive and happy with the work that we've been doing over the last few years. As John mentioned earlier, we had recent experience with the Cully project, and if you remember, we also did the Gibb Street overcrossing, although that one was led by ODOT because it crossed the interstate freeway system. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer that or turn it over to Michael.
We'll hold them to the end.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Good morning. For the record, I'm Michael Cobb, Manager, Office of Civil Rights, Oregon Department of Transportation. As was stated, whenever there's federal funding involved, there is a requirement for a DBE program. And as such, we manage the entire DBE process. On this particular project, what we will do, upon receipt of PS&E, which will provide us the sufficient scope, budget and schedule and so on, we will review the scopes of work that are involved on this project and then do a comparison to the availability of DBE firms that are out there that could do the types of work required by this project. Then there's simply a calculation that is run, availability versus the types of work and so on, that winds up rendering the goal that would be on this project in terms of a percentage. Being that we've done the disparity study and we have a waiver under the first disparity study, we have the ability now to set hard goals, so we can do that. And the two areas that we would be able to set them in would be African Americans and Asian Americans. According to the disparity study, those were the groups that were found that to have significant underutilization. Okay, so after the goal is set and the bids are received, as Greg just said, then we review what was actually submitted by the bidding contractors and match up who they have assigned, what small contractors they have assigned to the project, and make sure that the numbers balance out in accordance with the proposal, with the bid. And that's about basically how it works. Day-to-day management would of course be by Pbot. We do require reporting. We require that commercially useful function or CUF reviews are done on the job site to ensure that those firms that are dedicated or hired, those DB firms that are hired, are indeed out there on the job site doing the work. Okay, that is also a federal requirement. So we'll be working very closely with Pbot to ensure that we get the proper reporting, and because we also have to report to the federal government also on utilization. So that's basically it in a nutshell. Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioners?
I know there's going to be some questions in terms of the procurement piece of it, but I kind of want to put the project into perspective again. Could you go back to the slide that showed the district itself and kind of had empty lots in red? One back. Right. This project has been in the works for a long, long time. The initial grant was awarded in 2006. There has been a lot of citizen involvement, and people are much looking forward to it. It's going to have a huge impact in terms of how Lentz works. And I just wanted to point out the picture of the Assurity Northwest building, which is the next one. I mean, that is the project that's in Lentz, and this company really stepped up to build a beautiful project. It's an insurance company. And if you go back again, there was, before the economy collapsed, they were working on an expansion in the red space to the right of the existing building there. And I'm hearing that the insurance business is much better these days, and there's probably an opportunity that may happen again. We bought the building to the left of that, the red one, and you probably don't remember it, but it was hideous building, and it actually came within, I'm going to guess, 5 feet of the street. So it not only blocked the view of the cars coming up the street, but it was a scary place to walk up the sidewalk because there's just no place to go. That building is gone at this point, and it was really ugly. I think it was one of the first things that you saw as you came into this location, and it's gone now. And that lot is kind of an odd piece, and it's probably going to be something that Assurity Northwest might be able to use for outside use at some point. We're not sure. I'm going to point out that when we took a look at this, back in 2010, Commissioner Strauss asked his usual, can we underground everything? A lot of time and effort was taken to look into that. Unfortunately, it didn't work this time. Great idea. Keep pushing it. I love it. But this is a really important project for this neighborhood, and it's taken a long time, but it's going to be really, really helpful. So I just wanted to put the project into the context of that neighborhood. And as I said, ironically, I got an email from a neighborhood activist saying that, gosh, we haven't seen much go on, and we're about to, I hope. So that's all I had. Why don't we start? I know, Charles, you've got some questions.
Sure, and thanks for that discussion, because we have talked a lot about Lentz over the last 5 years, and we've developed a lot of capacity to invest in Lentz, and I think, Chair Andrews, what you're stating touches on the incremental investment approach. every little bit of investment promotes the next piece of investment and makes it more valuable. So I agree with you 100%. This is a very important development in the Lens community. Getting past the value of the development, it's how the development comes about. And we talk a lot about participation, minority, women, emerging small businesses. I appreciate, Dr. Cobb, your explanation of the process you go through at the state. And I really appreciate your reference to the disparity study, because I was going to raise that question. So you preempted my question there. But I will ask you this. When you stated that you look at available capacity for the type of project and the skills required, it sounds like that could change from project to project.
Oh, it does, absolutely.
So, okay, I just wanted to be clear on that. That was my interpretation. And when we look at your policy, now that analysis has not been completed with regard to this particular project yet, but
no.
do you have any targeted objectives, or do you have to wait until you go through that analysis?
Well, we have a statewide overall goal, okay, that we have to submit to the federal government, and that overall goal is broken down into two components. There's a race-conscious goal, which means that percentage of the overall goal has to be devoted to race-conscious giving projects and percentages to ethnic DBE firms, those two groups. And then there's the race neutral goal, which means that we have to make sure that there are DBEs that are outside of those groups that are also getting participation. So it's always a balancing act. I mean, as the year plays out and we set goals on projects, and we're actually realizing those goals, we have to make sure that we're not upsetting that balance, because the DBE program in its purest form is actually a race neutral program, okay, and it's only by a disparity study that you can address specific ethnicities that have been underutilized. So every single project has its own unique, attributes, if you will, and we look at every single project differently, and we look at how can we maximize the goal setting on it, but also being very, very conscious of the fact that we cannot upset that balance. We have to make sure that we're, in other words, if we start setting goals on projects and all of a sudden the DBE conscious goal, the race conscious goal, starts raising up like this, then we actually have to stop setting projects with race conscious goals to allow the race neutral goal to bring back up, because we want to maintain parity if possible. Okay.
It's easier every day, right?
Oh yes, yeah. Not a piece of cake.
Now, I know at PDC we have our own policy, workforce equity policy, and we've been, I think, very consistent and very successful in targeting a 20% level of participation. And I know we've seen some prior projects come in that have been driven by the state, and the goal is a little lower, and I understand why, but clearly we're all moving to get to that higher level of participation. And you mentioned the disparity study will allow you to focus maybe a little differently on African Americans and Asian Americans. And that's African American. I don't want people to assume anything. We're looking at the totality of minority populations and disadvantaged businesses. So I think we're all moving in the same direction. I know you have policy and procedure in place that you have to follow. I would hope we can tilt you a little bit, not assuming that we need to, but we're targeting 20. Yeah. And we would love to see that, but I understand the process you have to go through, so I appreciate you coming here and explaining this to us, because I think it's helpful for everyone to understand how this works.
Yeah, and understand that we strongly encourage all of our prime contractors to utilize DB firms, regardless of ethnicity, So, and all I'm just saying is that all we can legally set, the law, Ninth Circuit Court, compelling evidence, et cetera. The only goals we can legally set is on those two ethnicities. But we strongly encourage the prime contractors to hire across the board all ethnicities, all DBs. So yeah, we're with you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming in and explaining this to us, and I look forward to working with you. And thank you, Greg, also for coming in. Okay. That's all I have.
Thank you, Charles. Steve?
Spectacular project. Just a couple minor questions. With regard to the 2% for art, has there been an identification where that money is going to be spent? Is that for the monument, or is any idea where the 2% for art is going to be spent?
Right. At this point, I think they're working with RAC to determine where and how the funds would be spent. Our project manager is here. I don't know if they have any additional information. No. So, yeah. Okay. So it hasn't been said.
Next, there's obviously a significant amount of PDC-owned land, and this is a wonderful enhancement to that property and property value, which I think is a benefit to the taxpayers. Are the utilities adequate to serve the future development of those sites that we have, and do we need to upgrade those utilities now before we make any street or sidewalk or other improvements?
So typically when we do a street improvement project, and in this case the primary work here is sidewalk work, and widening the sidewalks, pedestrian improvements, signals. We also are required to do the stormwater improvements to match any impervious space that's created as a result of the project work. We also notify all the utility companies in advance of the project to allow them either to upgrade their facilities or, if necessary, move their facilities out of the way if, for example, there's a power pole or some other above ground structure that's going to be in the way of the new improvements. So we give them advance notice of that requirement to move, or they can take then the opportunity to do betterments to improve the utility capacity or structure in the area. So it's typically in areas like this, the improvements are older, so it really depends upon the agency as to whether they want to go in right at this point and make that improvement.
Obviously, we just don't want to put in brand new infrastructure and then have to tear it up to accommodate the new development that hopefully will be laying the groundwork for, literally. So I think this would be a great opportunity to evaluate those utilities and make sure they're adequate for those future developments before we make them. And then finally, in terms of the contracting, certain amount of the funds are provided by the PDC, others are federally funded. Does it make any sense to separate some of the contracts so that some of the work could be done by the city or the PDC and have a higher level of minority participation? Could all the landscape working, as an example, be segregated out of the contract? Is there any other innovative or different ways that we could do things?
Generally, we don't do that. And one of the reasons is environmental. So when you do a federally funded project, all funds are federalized as a part of that project and must comply with federal regulation, including the environmental regulation. So by pulling pieces out of the project, generally it's not looked upon favorably by the federal government in terms of trying to avoid or not do or meet some regulation related to environmental. So we generally try to stay away from that. Occasionally work is done by the Bureau with our own forces if it's a very small amount of work and it's very specialized. But we try, for the most part, and I think it's the aim of the federal government in providing the grants, to have as much of the work contracted out as possible for job generation and for development of the contracting industry. So for those reasons, we try to keep all the work together and contracted in one contract.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It just seems that you could certainly have kind of a scope of work that would be done under the state documents to prepare all the different landscape aisles, and then the actual landscape and the irrigation, all the plantings, all those things could be done by a separate contract managed by the city or managed by the PDC. So just consider that. I realize that's not the typical way that you've done it, but we're looking for innovative solutions here.
And, we do look for every opportunity we can, both to be as efficient as possible in the way we do the work and to meet all the goals, whether they're federal, state, or local, as we do our projects. So we will certainly look at opportunities to do things like that while still complying with all of our regulation.
Thank you. John?
Well, thanks to both of you for coming in this morning. I assume there's apprenticeship goals on the workforce side?
Yes, there will be. There will be goals there, too.
Okay, good. And my office is just a a mile or two north of there, so I get to go through there at least once a week. And Scott, it was good that you gave an overall assessment of the neighborhood, and this is really going to dress it up. It's a good project. And I want to tell John and Sue and anybody else from PDC that's been working with the Minority Contractors Improvement Program and OAMI and getting the word out, and so that everybody is aware of the project. They've got time to bid it, look at the plans. That's good work. It's a lot better to do the effort up front and try and maximize participation than go whoops after it's been bid. So thanks for that work.
Thank you, Dr. Cobb, Mr. Jones. Thank you, John. On behalf of the Commission, I can't thank you enough for the work that you have done to push us all in the right direction with regard to these issues of equity, especially with regard to construction. And we trust you. When you come in front of us and tell us that everybody's working together to make this happen, and I know you're trusted by the community as well. So we're looking forward to seeing a successful project on every level. But
thank you.
It's because of your work and your interest and your drive, and I want to thank you for that.
Appreciate it.
Okay, I would look for a motion to approve Resolution 6921, authorize an IGA with and right-of-way dedications to Pbot for construction of Foster Woodstock Streetscape Enhancement Project.
So moved.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? With that, Patrick, with this new technology, could we have somebody show us how to actually do a proper pick and roll?
Did it well last night.
The master of the telestrator, that's right.
Absolutely.
Well, before we close, if I could, I want to thank Patrick for acknowledging Alan Price. That is a tragic loss for many people on a personal level and the city and state on a professional level. He has done some amazing things at the University of Oregon, at OHSU, so it'll be tough to replace him. So I want to thank you for acknowledging him. I was going to do that myself. And then second, with Julie Cody leaving, I want to second your comments, Chair Andrews. I've had the pleasure of working closely with Julie for many years in the finance and audit capacity and just in general. And I can say, and I think everyone would agree, Julie brings expertise and passion to the job, and she makes it fun to do the work. Now, I don't work here every day. Some of you might have some different experiences with Julie, but I can tell you it's been a pleasure for me working with her. She makes the job easy. She makes the job fun. She always informs you. And because of her efforts, PDC has moved a long way in a matter of a short number of years. So we're going to miss you, Julie. Thank you for everything, and we all have your number.
Thanks, Charles. We're adjourned. Have a great day.